Hey Bayek, it's me Ian, and in today's video we're going to look at The Man Upstairs, and it's from 1958. It's a psychological drama, and thank you so much, Tony. This is in those films that he sent me, those in the Amazon package. Fantastic. It's a network one, so sadly it will probably go out of print, but I'm glad that they did this. It's the sort of film that could just disappear. Unfortunately, now with network it'll go out of print. Very sad, really. Anyhow, it's 88 minutes long. There is no Rotten Tomatoes thing on this. I think because it's more like seen almost like really as a B movie. It's written by 3 people involved in the script. Maybe that is reflected in that the sort of tone of the film. It's Alan Faulkner, Robert Dunbar, and the director Don Chaffee. Now he I think being the director as well must have had quite an influence on the script. It was produced by Robert Dunbar, and as I say, it was directed by Don Chaffee. He had a very distinguished career as a director in films and TV work. Films that stand out 1963, Jason and the Argonauts, The 3 Lives of Thomasina. I had to get that in 1963. That's a Disney one. I really like that. I don't know why, because I remember it going way back, that one. 1966, 1 million years BC, the Raquel Welch film. Hammer produced. Wow. I love that film. I've talked about that. Even though I've not actually reviewed it yet, but it will come on the channel. I do talk about it, but there will be a review. Don't forget my Hammer slot on Saturdays. Anyhow, we've got... Also, he did another Disney one, which is quite a popular Disney film, is Pete's Dragon. Yes, Pete's Dragon, a Disney film. Now, who's in the cast? Well, I think the person that really makes this film, the actor, is, of course, Richard Attenborough again. He plays Peter Watson. I've talked so much about Richard Attenborough. I don't really need to go through all his films, as you know. But I think one of the most powerful films that we've seen him in was Seance on a Wet Afternoon, 1964. That was such an impressive performance. And I feel in this film, he, again, is leading the way. Amazing, as usual. Bernard Lee is also in the cast as Inspector Thompson. He, of course, is obviously famous for his James Bond appearances. He played M right up to 1979 Moonraker, and he was in the first one, Dr. No, 1962. But films we'd seen him in, do you remember him? He was in Whistle Down the Wind, really good in that. Quite a very key role in that. Great British actor. Then we got Donald Houston playing Mr. Sanderson, another very solid British actor, popping up in all sorts of places. He was in the Hammer thriller Maniac. That was in 1963. He was in a Carry On film, yes, Carry On Jack, 1963. And of course, I always mention this. Where Eagles Dare, one of my favourite war films, 1968. He was in that. Can't be bad, can it? And then there's Dorothy Allison playing Mrs. Barnes. Most notable connection I can find with her, again, lots of different smaller roles and TV work, but she was in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, 1971, brilliant Hammer film. Then we've got Patricia Jessie playing Mrs. Lawrence. She was in The City of the Dead, 1960, horror film which had Christopher Lee in it. Amazing film. Then we got Virginia Maxwell playing Helen Gray. She was also in a horror film. Well, it's more of a, I suppose it's more of a thriller rather than a horror film. I said that, I think, because Peter Cushing's in it, 1960. And it was a Bolting Brothers film. So, it's not really a horror, but, you know. Me, I get carried away. I see Peter Cushing and I think, all right, even though he didn't just do horror films. But yeah, she's in that. But it's sad. She had a sort of on and off career in films. She suffered, ironically, considering this film, what it's about, she did suffer depression. And she took a overdose and sadly died in 1968. It's very sad when you see that, really. Then we've got Kenneth Griffith, who you might recognise. He plays Pollen, his face that recognise. And we saw him quite recently in a film I reviewed, Payroll, from 1961. When I say recent, you know, probably a couple of months ago. But to me, it all seems like that was a great film. Do you remember that? As a crime film, Payroll. Excellent it was. Then he was also in a film that I loved as well, Revenge, 1971, which I remember because Joan Collins was in it. Fantastic film. He was in that. And then we've got Alfred Burke. What a recognisable face he is. He plays Mr. Barnes. He was, of course, in The Nanny. Yeah, The Nanny, another Hammer connection, 1965. And he had such a distinguished career, but he was really well known in a TV show, Public Eye. It was a very long TV show, ran from 1965 to 1975. That's a long time. It was very popular. Incidentally, his last film he appeared in was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets from 2002. He had a massive career, absolutely. So I think one important thing about this film is that there's actually no music in the soundtrack. No soundtrack music at all. Now that is interesting because the actors, it puts a lot more on them in many ways about how to express and show the emotion. Music always adds to emotion. So it's just an interesting point. But what is this story about? Well, it is about Peter Wilson, played by Richard Attenborough. He lives at the top of this series of, I suppose it's like a large boarding house, like flats. He's on the top floor, and let's be honest, he's going through a breakdown, severe depression, and he's becoming kind of, I think many people are seeing around him as a disruptive person, and it doesn't appear to be much understanding from a lot of the people of his situation. But we learn the reason for this depression and this, whole situation and breakdown, why it's happening, is that he was a scientist. Yeah, we see that in the way that he actually taught one of the residents' children and she's the only one that's really very sympathetic towards him. And he's obviously a man of intelligence, he was. He was a scientist, we learn, but he couldn't really cope or live with himself because he had caused an accident which had killed his fiance's brother. And this guilt was with him. And so you've got all these factors coming down, joining together, and there he is in this. There's no help obviously being, there's nothing there to really support him in this. And don't forget, we're living in a certain time when mental illness was still a very a subject that people didn't like to discuss a lot. And this is an interesting film, the fact that he's actually looking at it in a sympathetic way, rather than just carting them off to the nearest asylum. We were still using the word asylum, not psychiatric hospitals. That's what they were, going back to the Victorian times. And this is where he was heading. But the thing was, he came across, the authority, which doesn't really have an understanding. This is what this film is trying to say, I think. And that is in form of the residents who, there's like a little scuffle and he's been attacked. That's actually brilliantly played by Kenneth Griffith as Pauline. And he brings the police in, and then it escalates from that. More and more people seem to be getting involved in the outside world. And can he cope with this situation? He's disintegrating. He can't cope with it. He's going to explode in some way. And of course, the fact that he's got a gun in there as well is just making it even worse. And you can see an inevitability about where this might go, or may not. And that's the intrigue in the film. Now, I think if Richard Attenborough wasn't in this film, the film maybe wouldn't stand as much. That is the power of his acting. I don't think, I'm going to be honest here, you can't really compare it with Seance on a Wet Afternoon, which was such a marvellous performance by by all the actors, but particularly Richard Attenborough and Kim Stanley. Their performances were so good in that. And this, you feel, is lacking something slightly in that. It's a good film to watch, but you feel it could have been maybe even better. I don't know whether the script was perhaps to do with that, or it's difficult subject matter, but it's a valiant effort, and it's enjoyable to watch. For me, just watching Richard Attenborough is just fantastic. So I do recommend this film to watch, but I would warn you, maybe expecting nowadays, as people expect more action, it's not into the action. It's a psychological drama mainly, and it's good, very good. Yeah, I would recommend it, but I can see that not everybody will that, and I understand. I'm comparing it with other films, that it isn't perhaps the greatest film, but it's not a bad film. It's an enjoyable film to watch, and it all is, I think, to do with Richard Attenborough as usual. His performance, fantastic. Just a quick look here. There we are. This is the network release on DVD. It's in one of these thin cases, and there's not really any extras on this. It's just an image gallery. But that's a nice, look at that disc's nice, isn't it? And that from the same Richard Attenborough. Fantastic. And thank you so much, Tony. It's great. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and then we'll let you know when I produce these videos. And also you can see what other things I've done. I'm building up hopefully quite a few playlists and things that you can look at and see if you enjoy them. And if you like this, please give it a like, because it helps with algorithms, so more people then might enjoy what I'm doing, or perhaps they won't. And it all costs note. It's fantastic. No, it don't cost a penny. But also, if you've got any comments, please put your comments down. I really love to read your comments, and I'll answer your comments. And just fantastic. I do. I really appreciate them. And yeah, great, wonderful. So that's it. All I've got to say is, I'll see thee again.